What if the darkest moment of your life became the key to your redemption? Imagine standing on a windswept cliff, the ocean roaring below like a beast unleashed, each wave a cruel reminder of the lives you couldn't save. Nathaniel Nate Brooks, a once celebrated Coast Guard pilot with 2,500 flight hours, now a hollow shell of his former self, stares into the abyss, his heart as stormy as the sea. 3 years ago, a disastrous hover in a tempest claimed his crew, leaving him to teach basic flight lessons at a remote coastal airstrip, a shadow of the hero he once was. The salty wind bites at his face, his calloused hands trembling on the cliff's edge as memories of that fateful night flood back. The helicopter's sickening lurch, the screams of his team, the unbearable silence that followed. Can you feel the weight of his shame, the icy grip of failure as the storm's echo surrounds him? A crackling radio breaks through his solitude, its voice urgent with a chilling familiarity. A capsized yacht, 30 souls, a Category 3 hurricane. Nate turns the volume down, his chest tightening, but the call lingers like a ghost from his past, whispering a challenge he's not sure he can face. Welcome to Daily Narrated Stories. I'm beyond excited to share Nate's journey of bravery and renewal with you. His cliffside cabin holds a single keepsake, a weathered photo of his lost crew, their smiles a daily torment that haunts his every morning. Each dawn, Nate jogs the shoreline, the sand gritty underfoot, sips tea on his porch as the gulls screech overhead, then teaches students the safest maneuvers. No risks, no danger, just the illusion of control. Clear skies today, he tells his student, forcing a grin, but his phone buzzes with a Coast Guard summons, shattering the calm. If you were Nate, would you face the tempest and your fears, or stay safe on solid ground? Comment 1 to brave the storm, or 2 to stay behind. Let's hear your choice. Please, from the bottom of my heart, subscribe to Daily Narrated Stories. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, and your support will help us share more tales of courage that inspire and uplift. Nate's drive to the Coast Guard station feels like a plunge into a nightmare he's fought to forget, each mile marker a step closer to the tempest that shattered him. His phone vibrates incessantly with the message, capsized yacht, 30 civilians, Hurricane Kael, no other precision pilots available. The words sear into his mind like a branding iron, each one a dagger of memory from that night 3 years ago when he lost everything. He grips the steering wheel of his rusted pickup, the leather slick with sweat, his knuckles whitening as the coastal road winds endlessly before him, a ribbon of asphalt leading to his past. The sky churns with angry clouds, their dark swirls mirroring the turmoil in his heart. Guilt that gnaws at his bones, fear that chokes his breath, and a faint flicker of duty he thought he'd buried deep. He passes a faded diner where he once shared a meal with his old rescue swimmer, Tara, her laughter a distant echo now drowned by the screams of that stormy night. The diner's neon sign flickers weakly, its glow casting long shadows on the wet pavement, a haunting reminder of simpler times when he still believed in himself. What if he fails again? What if more lives are lost because he's not the pilot he once was? The questions weigh heavier than the storm brewing above, pressing down on his chest like a leaden weight. He glances at the passenger seat, where a crumpled map lies, a relic from a training mission with Tara, her handwriting scrawled in the margins. Trust your instincts, Brooks. Her words feel like a taunt now, a cruel irony as doubt floods his mind, threatening to drown him before the storm even begins. At the hangar, Captain Morrow greets him with a solemn nod, his lined face carved with urgency, the creases around his eyes deeper than Nate remembers. "Didn't expect you to come, Brooks," Morrow says, his voice thick with the gravity of the moment, a quiet respect beneath the strain. The hangar reeks of jet fuel and ocean salt, a scent that floods Nate with memories of his last mission, the howling wind that tore through the night, the cries of his crew, Tara, Liam, and Cora, each name a shard of glass in his heart. Tara's locker still holds a photo of her dog, a scrappy mutt she swore brought her luck, its edges curled with time. Liam's has a sticker of a mountain peak, his dream climb, the colors faded but defiant. Cora's is empty, her quiet presence always speaking through actions, not words, a void that mirrors the silence after her fall. "It's dire, Nate," Morrow continues, snapping him back to the present. his tone sharp with urgency. Yacht flipped 15 miles out. Hurricane Kael's a Category 3, winds at 95 knots, 16-foot seas. No ships nearby. We need your hover, the one you nailed in Hurricane Zane. Nate's breath catches, his pulse hammering as memories of that legendary hover clash with the failure that followed. The night, he became a cautionary tale instead of a hero. He can still hear the applause from Hurricane Zane, the cheers of his team as they landed, Tara's proud grin. But that memory sours with the screams that came later, the storm that took them all. The hangar's fluorescent lights buzz overhead, their harsh glow illuminating the ghosts of his past. Each shadow a reminder of what he's lost and what's at stake. Nate closes his eyes, the memory of that night 3 years ago crashing over him like the waves outside, relentless and cold. A hydraulic failure had sent the helicopter spiraling, Tara the first to fall, her safety line snapping like a twig in the gale, her voice a desperate crackle through the radio. "Brooks, I'm slipping." Liam's voice followed, raw with panic. "I can't hold on." "Brooks," his scream swallowed by the storm as the chopper lurched, while Cora's silence confirmed the worst. She was gone before the crash, her harness empty when they hit the water. The investigation cleared Nate, blaming the mechanics, but the memorial seared his guilt deeper. Tara's father clutching her dog's collar, his sobs echoing in the quiet chapel. Liam's sister staring blankly, her hands trembling as she held his climbing gear. Cora's son handing Nate a drawing of a helicopter with "You tried" in shaky crayon, his small face etched with confusion. "I can't fail again," Nate whispers, his heart pounding so loud he fears Morrow hears it, the rhythm a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. "They'll die without you," Morrow says softly, his eyes searching Nate's face for a spark of the pilot he once knew. "But it's your call." Nate's gaze drifts to the flight suits on the wall, their worn fabric a silent challenge, each stitch a testament to missions survived, and those that weren't. He remembers the last time he wore one, the weight of it as he stood before Tara's coffin, promising her father he'd never fly again. The storm outside howls louder, a mirror to the chaos in his mind, its roar seeping through the hangar's walls like a warning. What if he says no, and 30 families grieve as his did? What if he says yes, and history repeats? The faces of strangers flash through his thoughts, their lives hanging on his choice, their unknown stories a heavy burden. Nate's hand hovers over a flight suit, the rough fabric a reminder of who he once was. A hero, not a failure. His name is gone from the locker, erased like his confidence, but the suit fits like a second skin, its weight both alien and familiar, the zipper cold against his trembling fingers. "Who's my crew?" he asks, the words bitter with fear, each syllable tasting like rust on his tongue. "Jessa, co-pilot, sharp but untested in hurricanes. Finn, rescue swimmer. He's our best." Morrow replies, his tone steady but urgent, a quiet plea beneath the facts. Nate nods, the burden settling like a heavy cloak, one he thought he'd never wear again, its fabric scratching at his neck like a warning. He zips up the suit, each click a step toward the storm, his fingers trembling with the anxiety coiling in his gut, a living thing that rides with every breath. He could still walk away, return to his cabin, sip tea on the porch, pretend the call never came, the radio's voice just a bad dream. But the photo of Tara, Liam, and Cora flashes in his mind, their eyes pleading, "Don't let it happen again." Their faces are etched in his memory, a gallery of trust he betrayed. He imagines Jessa and Finn in their place, their lives now in his hands, their futures dependent on a man who's already failed once. The thought of failing them, of adding more names to his nightmares, makes his stomach churn while rising in his throat. But the thought of 30 people drowning, their families left to grieve as he had grieved, is worse, a weight that crushes his resolve to stay safe. He adjusts the suit's collar, the fabric rough against his skin, and takes a deep breath, the air thick with the scent of jet fuel and salt, a reminder of the battle ahead. As Nate adjusts the suit, a memory surfaces, a sunny day after a successful rescue. Tara tossing a frisbee to Liam while Cora sketched the scene, her rare smile lighting up the beach like a beacon. They'd toasted with cheap lemonade, the kind that stung their throats with its tartness, Tara joking, "Brooks, you're a legend. Don't let it go to your head." Her laughter bright against the sound of crashing waves. Liam had chimed in. "You'll be telling this story to rookies someday." His grin wide as he ruffled Cora's hair, her quiet chuckle a rare treasure. That joy feels like a lifetime ago, a stark contrast to the dread now clawing at him, its talons sinking deeper with every heartbeat. Could he reclaim that sense of purpose, that camaraderie, or would this storm bury him deeper in regret? The question lingers like a storm cloud, heavy and ominous. He pictures Tara's dog, the one in the photo, waiting for her to come home. She never did, and Nate had delivered the news, the father's anguished cry echoing in his ears even now. The thought of failing Jessa and Finn, of adding more names to his nightmares, makes his stomach churn, a cold sweat breaking out on his brow. Yet the thought of 30 strangers drowning, their families left to grieve, their stories unfinished, is a heavier weight, a burden he can't ignore. He takes a shaky breath, the air thick with fuel and salt, and steps forward, each movement a defiance of the fear that threatens to paralyze him. In the ready room, Nate studies the weather maps. Hurricane Kael's swirling mass a mirror of his past nightmare, its angry reds and yellows pulsing on the screen like a living thing. The radar blinks with the yacht's position, a red in the storm's chaos, a taunting beacon amidst the swirling fury. Winds gust at 95 knots, seas at 16 feet, conditions that could shred a helicopter like paper, tearing through metal and hope alike. Nate traces the storm's counterclockwise rotation with a trembling finger, calculating their approach, his mind racing with variables: wind shear, visibility, fuel burn. Jessa enters, her eyes widening as she takes in his presence, her breath catching slightly. "You're Brooks? The hover legend? I thought you retired," she says, her voice a mix of awe and disbelief. "I did," Nate mutters, pointing to the map with a steadiness he doesn't feel. "We'll approach from the southeast, better winds there. This mission's got an 80% chance of failure. Jessa, back out now if you want." Jessa squares her shoulders, her jaw set, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm in. Those people need us." Her determination mirrors Liam's, the way he'd always been the first to volunteer, his steady presence a rock for the team. Nate feels a pang of both pride and dread, a duality that tightens his chest. He can't lose another crew, not again, not when Jess's resolve reminds him so much of what he's already lost. The maps blur as he blinks back the memory, forcing himself to focus on the present, on the lives waiting in the storm. Nate turns to the equipment locker, his hands moving automatically as he selects the gear he's used hundreds of times before, each piece a tether to a past he can't escape. The helmet's weight is familiar, its visor scratched from years of use. Each mark a story of a life saved, or lost, the deepest scratch from a mission where he'd pulled a child from a sinking boat, her grateful sob echoing in his ears. He adjusts the radio headset, the earpiece crackling to life with static that sounds too much like the storm outside, a prelude to the chaos awaiting them. The survival vest, with its emergency beacon, feels heavier than it should, as if it's carrying the ghosts of his past, the weight of Tara, Liam, and Cora pressing against his chest. He clips it on, the straps digging into his shoulders, a reminder of the burden he's chosen to bear, each click a commitment he can't undo. Jessa watches him, her own gear in hand, her movements precise but nervous, her fingers fumbling slightly with the straps. "You've done this before," she says, more to herself than to him, seeking reassurance in the routine. "Hundreds of times," Nate replies, his voice hollow, the words echoing in the empty space of his resolve. "But never like this," he thinks, never with the memory of failure so fresh, so raw. He points to the map again, his fingers steady despite the tremor in his chest. "The hurricane's rotation gives us a slight advantage from the southeast. We'll need to maintain communication with the survivors if possible." His voice is calm, professional, but inside, he's screaming. What if the radio fails again? What if he can't hear their cries? The thought of silence, of not knowing if they're alive or dead, terrifies him more than the storm itself, a fear that coils tighter with every second. Finn, the rescue swimmer, joins them, his calm demeanor a painful echo of Tara's, his broad shoulders and steady gaze a mirror to her quiet strength. "I've studied your hover technique," Finn says, his voice respectful, almost reverent, as he adjusts his harness. They still teach it in training. Never thought I'd see it live. Nate's throat tightens, the words a double-edged sword. Don't expect miracles, he thinks, but he forces a nod, his jaw clenched. This is going to be rough, he warns, his voice low, the warning as much for himself as for Finn. Finn reminds him so much of Tara. The same quiet confidence, the same readiness to dive into danger, the same spark in his eyes that Tara had before every mission. He remembers her surfacing from a training dive with a seashell, grinning, for luck, her voice bright against the crash of waves, her optimism alight in the team's darkest moments. Now, Finn's presence feels like a ghost, a reminder of what Nate lost, and what he can't lose again, the stakes higher with every familiar gesture. He checks his gear one last time, the routine grounding him, his fingers lingering on the emergency beacon as if it could anchor him to the present. The storm outside grows louder, its howl seeping through the walls like a warning, the wind rattling the hangar doors with a ferocity that promises destruction. Nate glances at Finn, seeing Tara's grin superimposed over his face, and feels a surge of protectiveness. He won't let this storm take another friend. As Nate secures his vest, a sudden tremor shakes the hangar, a precursor gust from Hurricane Kael, rattling the walls and flickering the lights, the bulbs buzzing ominously before stabilizing. The radio crackles with a new warning from the tower, winds now gusting to 100 knots. Extreme turbulence expected, potential for rotor icing. The voice clipped with urgency. Nate's heart skips a beat. This storm is worse than he feared, and they haven't even taken off, the conditions already pushing the boundaries of what any helicopter can withstand. Could the Jayhawk hold against such force? Or would history repeat itself with a new crew, a new tragedy? The question hangs unanswered, a specter in the flickering light, as he leads Jessa and Finn to the pad. The uncertainty gnaws at him, each step heavier with the weight of what's to come. The winds howl, a relentless reminder of the beast waiting outside. He glances at the weather map one last time. The storm's eye now closer than expected, its rapid intensification a wild card that could doom them all. Jessa catches his eye, her face pale but resolute, and Nate wonders if she senses the same dread, the same unspoken fear that this mission might be their last. The hangar doors groan as they open, revealing a sky black with rage, lightning splitting the horizon like a jagged scar. Walking to the helicopter pad, Nate's steps falter with each memory. Tara's laughter, bright and infectious. Liam's steady voice, always calm under pressure. Cora's quiet courage, her presence a silent strength. The wind lashes at his flight suit, the fabric snapping like a whip against his legs, the air sharp with salt and the metallic tang of impending rain. The Jayhawk waits on the pad, rotors already turning, its sleek frame a stark contrast to the chaos brewing on the horizon, its paint chipped but its spirit unbroken. Nate runs his hand along its fuselage, a ritual to ground himself, the metal cool and smooth under his palm, a fleeting comfort against the storm's wrath. He remembers the first time he flew this model, years ago, with Tara in the back, cracking jokes over the headset. "She's a warrior, Brooks. She'll keep us safe," she'd said, patting the chopper's side. But she hadn't. Not that night. The memory a bitter sting as the wind howls louder, a primal scream that drowns out Tara's voice. Jessa notices Nate's hesitation, her brow furrowing with concern. "You okay?" she asks, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Not a sir anymore," Nate replies gruffly, his tone rougher than intended. "Focus on your instruments out there. Nothing else matters." He climbs into the cockpit, the seat molding to his body like an old friend, but the familiarity brings no comfort, only dread, a cold knot in his stomach that tightens with every gust. Settling into the pilot's seat, Nate runs the checklist with Jessa, his voice steadier than his nerves, each word a lifeline to keep him grounded. The cockpit smells of metal and electronics, a sterile contrast to the storm waiting outside, the air tinged with the faint ozone of impending lightning. "Hydraulics normal," Jessa confirms, her voice steady but her hands gripping the clipboard a little too tightly, her nails digging into the paper. "Fuel full, comms open," she adds, her eyes flicking to the storm beyond the windshield, a flicker of fear in her gaze. The tower clears them. "Rescue 7201, takeoff approved." Winds at target now 90 knots, gusting to 105. The voice crackling through the headset with a mechanical indifference. Nate's hands tighten on the controls, the collective smooth under his palm, the cyclic responsive to his touch, each movement a test of his resolve. He can still feel the ghost of that other flight, the way the controls had betrayed him, slipping from his grip as the chopper fell, the memory of physical ache in his hands. He pushes the thought down, focusing on the present, on the lives depending on him, their faces unknown but their hope a tangible weight. The Jayhawk lifts off, the ground falling away as they climb, the station shrinking below them into a speck of light against the darkening horizon. Nate guides the chopper forward, accelerating toward the storm, his heart pounding in time with the rotors, each beat a reminder of the stakes. Hurricane Kael's storm wall looms like a towering beast, a fortress of gray rage with lightning flashing within its heart, each bolt a promise of destruction. Jessa, watch the radar. Finn, double-check your gear. Nate orders, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air in the cockpit, his flight suit clinging to his skin. The chopper vibrates as they hit the outer bands of the hurricane, the frame rattling with each gust, the sound a relentless assault on their nerves. They plunge into the storm, rain hammering the windshield with a force that sounds like gunfire, visibility dropping to nothing, the world outside a void of gray and black. The rain is so thick it's like flying through a waterfall, each drop a needle against the glass, the wipers struggling to keep up. Nate squints through the downpour, his eyes burning with the effort, but there's nothing to see. Only the storm, endless and merciless, its roar a primal scream that drowns out everything else. He adjusts the controls, his hands steady despite the shaking of the chopper, each movement a battle against the wind's fury, a test of his skill and his will. Jessa's breathing quickens beside him, her hands hovering over the instruments, ready to react to any warning, her tension a mirror to his own. Heading 050, wind sheer from the northeast, Jessa reports, her voice tight with concentration, her eyes locked on the radar screen. Vessel 2 miles ahead, she adds, her tone steadying as she focuses on the task, a small anchor in the chaos. Nate grips the controls, making micro-adjustments as the Jayhawk bucks against the gusts, each movement a battle against the storm's fury, the chopper's frame groaning under the strain. A sudden pitch sends warning lights flickering on the console. What's failing now? The question flashes through Nate's mind like a lightning bolt, his heart leaping into his throat. The chopper shudders violently, the frame groaning louder, a metallic wail that echoes the screams of his past crew. Nate corrects their course, his hands moving instinctively, muscle memory taking over where fear threatens to paralyze him, his focus narrowing to the instruments before him. The storm's roar is deafening, even through the headset, a primal scream that drowns out everything else, the wind pushing against them like a living force. He glances at Jessa, her face pale but focused, her fingers flying across the instruments, her determination a lifeline in the chaos. "We're holding," she says, but her voice wavers, betraying her fear, a crack in her composure that mirrors the cracks in Nate's resolve. Below, Clara, a schoolteacher, clings to the capsized yacht, her fingers numb from the cold, her thoughts a desperate loop on her students back home. She'd promised her class a field trip to the aquarium, their excited faces flashing in her mind as waves crash over her, the icy water stealing her breath. Little Mia had hugged her tightly before she left, whispering, "You're the best, Miss Clara," her small arms warm around Clara's waist. Now, that promise feels like a cruel joke, the cold seeping into her bones, her strength fading with each wave that slams against the hull, her grip slipping on the slick metal. She spots the helicopter's lights cutting through the storm like a lifeline, a faint glow in the darkness, and whispers a prayer, her voice lost in the wind, her lips trembling with cold and hope. Her hope hangs by a thread, as fragile as the hull beneath her, the yacht groaning as it takes on more water, its creaks a countdown to disaster. Clara thinks of Mia's drawing, a clumsy sketch of a fish she'd proudly shown her, and vows to survive, to see that smile again, to keep her promise no matter the odds. The helicopter's roar grows closer, a beacon of salvation, and Clara clings tighter, her numb fingers aching, her heart pounding with a desperate need to live. The capsized yacht emerges through breaks in the rain. A white hull overturned in churning seas, people clinging to it like ants on a leaf, their movements frantic as they spot the helicopter. Some wave desperately, their arms weak from the cold, their faces pale with fear and hope, a fragile light in the storm's darkness. Nate watches them, their desperation a mirror to his own fear, the weight of their lives pressing on his chest like a physical force. He can't fail them, not like he failed Tara, Liam, and Cora, their names a litany of guilt that echoes with every beat of his heart. Jessa switches to thermal imaging, the screen between them flickering to life with ghostly white shapes against the dark water. 30 heat signatures clustered on the yacht's hull, some fading like dying embers. "We need to move fast," Jessa adds, her voice tight, her eyes fixed on the screen, the fading signatures a ticking clock. Nate begins the approach, positioning the helicopter upwind of the capsized vessel, the Jayhawk fighting him with every gust, the wind a relentless adversary. Sweat drips down his face despite the cabin's chill, his flight suit clinging to his skin, the fabric heavy with rain and fear. "Finn, prepare for deployment," Nate orders, his voice steady despite the chaos, a calm facade over the storm within. "Jessa, monitor power levels. We're going to hover at 50 feet, he adds, his focus absolute, the maneuver a test of everything he's ever learned. A particularly violent gust rocks the helicopter, and for a moment, Nate is back in that other storm, the mechanical failure, the sudden drop, the screams that haunt his nightmares. Tara's voice echoes in his mind. "I'm going down, Brooks," followed by Liam's desperate cry, sharp and raw, and Cora's silence, a void that swallowed them all. The memory is so vivid he can smell the burning electronics from that night, feel the icy rain on his face as the chopper fell, hear the crack of Tara's safety line snapping. "We're drifting, need correction." Jessa's voice cuts through his flashback, pulling him back to the present, her words a lifeline in the chaos. Nate blinks, refocusing on the instruments, his hands moving to adjust the collective, his movements swift despite the tremor in his chest. The capsized yacht is directly below them now, the survivors' faces upturned, their hope a fragile light in the darkness, their desperation a mirror to his own. Nate begins the hover sequence, easing the collective, the Jayhawk responding despite the storm's fury, its engines roaring against the wind. He can feel the weight of the moment, the same maneuver that failed before, the same stakes that broke him, the pressure a physical ache in his shoulders. His breathing quickens, his chest tight with the memory of that other storm. But he forces himself to focus, to breathe, to fly, each second a test of his courage. As Nate holds the hover, a new warning blares through the cockpit. A rotor blade sensor detects microfractures, the strain of the storm pushing the chopper to its limits, the console flashing red with urgency. "We're at 90% structural capacity," Jessa warns, her voice sharp with panic, her hands hovering over the emergency controls. Nate's heart races. One wrong move, and the rotor could fail, plunging them into the sea, the chopper's frame already shuddering under the strain. The uncertainty heightens the stakes, each gust a potential disaster. The winds howl a relentless assault on their senses. He grits his teeth, focusing on the hover, the lives below depending on his precision, their faces a blur through the rain-streaked windshield. A sudden crack echoes through the cockpit, a piece of debris, flung by the storm, strikes the windshield, spiderwebbing the glass, the sound a gunshot in the chaos. Jessa gasps, her hands flying to the controls, but Nate holds steady, his voice calm despite the fear clawing at his throat. "We're okay. Keep monitoring power." The cracked windshield distorts the world outside, each fracture a reminder of how close they are to disaster, the storm's fury unrelenting. "This is it," Nate announces, his voice steady despite the memory threatening to overwhelm him, a calm facade over the storm within. Power fluctuating, Jessa reports, her eyes fixed on the gauges, her voice tight with concentration as the numbers flickered dangerously close to the red line. "Wind gusts approaching 105 knots, she adds, her tone a mix of fear and focus, the storm's intensity a relentless challenge. Nate forces himself to breathe slowly, his hands steady on the controls, telling himself, This isn't the same aircraft. This isn't the same day. He can do this. He has to. Finn, stand by for deployment, he says, his voice firm, a command that anchors him as much as it does Finn. Jessa, give me constant altitude readings, he adds, relying on her to keep him grounded, their teamwork a lifeline in the chaos. The helicopter hovers precariously, fighting against the hurricane's fury, every muscle in Nate's body tense with concentration, his shoulders aching from the effort. 52 feet and holding. Jessa confirms, her voice a lifeline in the chaos, a steady rhythm against the storm's roar. You're doing it, Nate, she adds, a flicker of awe in her tone. Below, the survivors watch with desperate hope as the rescue basket begins its descent, the cable swaying in the wind, a fragile thread between life and death. First contact made, Finn reports through the radio, his voice crackling with static but steady with purpose. I count 27 survivors visible, 3 appear unconscious, he adds, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos below. Nate nods, his jaw clenched as he holds the hover, the chopper's engine straining against the hurricane-force winds, the vibrations rattling his bones. Below, Finn secures the first survivor, Clara, the schoolteacher, into the rescue basket, her frail body trembling as she clutches the straps, her gray hair plastered to her face, her lips moving in a silent prayer. She looks up at the helicopter, her eyes meeting Nate's through the rain-streaked and cracked windshield, and he sees the flicker of hope in her gaze, a light that pierces through the storm's darkness. It's a look he's seen before, a look he couldn't fulfill 3 years ago, and it drives him to hold the hover, to fight the storm, to be the hero he once was. He remembers Tara's voice after a similar rescue, her words soft but firm. You gave them a second chance, Brooks, that's what we do. The memory fuels him, a spark of purpose amidst the fear, and he adjusts the controls, his hands steady despite the strain, his focus absolute. The storm rages on, the winds howling, the rain relentless, but Nate holds the hover, his determination a shield against the chaos. Nate, look out! Jessa shouts as a massive wave crashes over the yacht, washing 2 survivors into the sea, the water a churning black abyss that swallows them in an instant. Finn, 2 in the water, 11 o'clock position. Nate calls through the radio, his voice sharp with urgency, his heart pounding as he tracks the figures in the waves. Without hesitation, Finn releases his safety line and dives into the churning sea, his form disappearing into the waves, a speck of bravery against the storm's fury. Nate adjusts the hover position, tracking Finn's movement in the water, his heart pounding as he watches the swimmer fight the current, the wind pushing against the chopper with relentless force. Below, the 2 survivors struggle to stay afloat, their arms flailing, their heads barely above the surface, their cries swallowed by the storm's roar. One is a woman, her dark hair plastered to her face, her screams lost in the wind as she fights to keep her head above water, her strength fading with every second. The other is a teenager, Milo, his movements sluggish, his body limp as the cold saps his strength, his thoughts on his sister a faint tether to life. Finn reaches the woman first, securing her with a rescue strap, his movements swift despite the waves crashing over him, his strength a testament to his training. He swims toward Milo, his strokes powerful but strained, the storm fighting him every inch of the way, the current pulling at them like a living thing. Fuel at 18 minutes, Jessa reports, her voice tight with tension, her eyes darting between the gauges and the scene below. Engine temperature critical, she adds, the warning a stark reminder of their dwindling time. Nate makes a split-second decision, his voice calm but firm. We're going lower. Prepare for descent to 30 feet. That's below safety minimum in these conditions, Jessa warns, her eyes wide with fear, her hands gripping the controls. I know, Nate replies, already easing the helicopter down, the rotors creating violent downdrafts that temporarily clear visibility to the water below, the Jayhawk shuddering with the effort. The teenager, Milo, fights to stay afloat, his thoughts a desperate loop on his little sister, Ellie, who'd begged him to come on this yacht trip. Don't leave me, Milo, she'd whispered, her big eyes trusting, her small hand clutching his as they waved goodbye to their parents. Now, he's failing her, the cold sapping his strength, his limbs heavy as lead. the icy water numbing his fingers as he struggles to keep his head above the waves. He remembers Ellie's laugh, bright and tinkling like bells, as they played on the beach last summer, building sandcastles with lopsided towers. That memory is all that keeps him fighting. Each gasp for air a promise to see her again, to hear that laugh one more time. He sees Finn approaching through the waves, a lifeline in the chaos, his strong arms cutting through the water, and Milo clings to hope, whispering Ellie's name like a prayer, his voice hoarse and weak. The waves crash over him, pulling him under for a moment, the darkness of the water a suffocating void. But he kicks to the surface, his lungs burning, his vision blurring. Finn reaches him, securing a strap around his chest, and Milo feels a surge of relief, a second chance to keep his promise, to be the big brother Ellie needs. The helicopter's roar above is a beacon of salvation, its lights cutting through the storm, and Milo holds on, his body trembling but his heart alive with hope. Final survivors on board. Jessa confirms, her voice a mix of relief and exhaustion, the weight of the mission lifting slightly from her shoulders. Finn is secure, we're full. Nate eases the collective, lifting the Jayhawk away from the sea, the chopper groaning under the weight, but responding to his commands, a battered warrior still fighting. Command, this is Rescue 7201, he radios, his voice steady despite the strain. All 30 survivors recovered, returning with critical issues. As they clear the worst of the storm, Nate allows himself a moment to breathe, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly, the storm's roar fading to a distant growl. He's done it. The same maneuver that had haunted his nightmares for 3 years has just saved 30 lives. In the cabin behind him, survivors huddle together under emergency blankets, their faces pale but alive, their voices a soft murmur of gratitude. Clara clutches Milo's hand, her thoughts on her students, the field trip she'll now live to take them on, her promise to little Mia no longer a distant dream. Milo holds onto the memory of Ellie's laugh, his heart swelling with the hope of seeing her again, of being the brother she needs. The Coast Guard station emerges through the fading storm, a beacon of safety against the bruised sky. Nate guides the struggling Jayhawk toward the landing pad, emergency crews waiting below with stretchers and blankets, their figures small but determined. The chopper's frame vibrates with the strain, the engine temperature in the red, the warning lights a constant flicker on the console. Nice and easy, Nate murmurs to himself, his voice a quiet mantra as he eases the chopper down, the skids hovering just above the tarmac. The moment they touch down, the warning lights flash one final time, and the engine shuts down completely, the sudden silence a stark contrast to the storm's roar. Perfect timing, Jessa says, looking at Nate with newfound respect, her voice trembling with relief. Another minute in the air, and we'd have dropped like a stone. Nate nods, his hands finally releasing their death grip on the controls, his fingers aching from the effort. Medical teams rush in to help the survivors, their voices a flurry of activity as they assess injuries and wrap blankets around shivering bodies. Nate watches as Clara is helped onto a stretcher, her frail hand reaching out to touch the arm of a medic, her lips forming the words, "Thank you." Milo clings to a paramedic, his small body shaking but alive, his eyes bright with the promise of tomorrow. Nate feels a lump in his throat, the weight of their survival a balm to the wounds he's carried for so long. Captain Morrow approaches as Nate steps out, his boots heavy on the tarmac, the rain still dripping from his flight suit, each drop a reminder of the battle he's just fought. "That was legendary flying, Brooks," Morrow says, his eyes shining with pride, his voice thick with emotion. Nate nods, watching the last survivor, Clara, being carried to safety. She turns, her eyes meeting his, and mouths, "Thank you." Her gratitude a silent promise that he's kept her alive for Mia, for her students, for the future. In that moment, the burden of 3 years, Tara, Liam, Cora, feels lighter, a weight lifted by the lives he's saved today. He'll never forget his lost crew, but now he has 30 reasons to believe in himself again. 30 stories that will continue because he faced his deepest fear. What anchors you in life's storms? Hope, fear, or a promise to someone you love? Share your reflection in the comments. We'd love to hear how Nate's journey inspires you, how his courage speaks to your own battles. At Daily Narrated Stories, we're honored to bring you tales of resilience and redemption that touch the heart, stories that remind us of the strength we can find in our darkest moments. Don't miss your chance to be part of our community. Subscribe now to join us in reaching 1,000 subscribers. Time's fleeting, and your support will help us share more stories that change lives. Tap like, comment your favorite moment, and share this video with someone who needs a spark of hope today. Because in a world of storms, we all need a little light.